Okay, today we're going to go through step by step on how Google AI created that beautiful pie that you saw in the last video. And I've taken the screenshots of this chat that we had so that you can see the back and forth that you can do with AI, in this case Gemini. And you can do the back and forth. I'm going to show you the back and forth that you can do with chat and create something new. So I decided that the best way to do this is to just put a speech bubble down here for you to read so you can read along. And some of this gets pretty lengthy, and we don't really go into that because we make modifications later on. So I'll flash that screen up and you can press pause if you really want to go through every word of text, but it'll all be there for you. So I started out and I said to Gemini, I would like to create a new pie. I would like to have a creamy maraschino cherry flavored filling. Do you have any suggestions? And Google came back and said, that sounds like a nostalgic, vibrant, and delicious project. Maraschino cherries have a distinct almond adjacent sweetness that pairs beautifully with creamy textures. Here are 3 different ways you could approach a creamy maraschino filling depending on the texture and the vibe you're looking for. So it then went on to give me 3 suggestions. One was a pink velvet no-bake cheesecake, and basically it had cream cheese, whipped cream mixtures, and chopped maraschinos, and cherry syrup, and some extract and other things. That was option 1. Option 2 that it gave me was a maraschino pastry cream cooked. And it said if you want something more like a Boston cream pie or a fruit tart, a cooked custard is the way to go. And it told me what I needed for a cooked custard. Egg yolks, milk, sugar, cornstarch, and cherries, maraschino cherries. And the third suggestion was a cherry cloud chiffon pie. This is a light, airy, and holds its shape perfectly when sliced. The base is a gelatin stabilized base lightened with folded and beaten eggs with egg whites or heavy cream. The flavor is use a concentrated maraschino reduction. Simmer the juice from a jar until it's thick and swirl it through the filling for a marble effect. They call this a retro 50s dinner party. A salty pretzel crust to balance the intense sweetness of the cherries. That was the third suggestion. So, and it gave me some pro tips for the maraschino filling, i.e. dry the chopped cherries and put some lemon juice in there. All right. And then it asked me, would you like me to provide a full step-by-step recipe for one of these variations? And I said, yes, let's look at option 3. The maraschino cherry cloud pie is a showstopper. It's a light, ethereal texture that feels like eating a cherry-flavored cloud. But the gelatin ensures the slices cleanly so you get the perfect shape, sharp angles on a plate. And here's the recipe for a 9-inch pie. So this is for the cherry cloud chiffon pie. The ingredients are there. I'm not going to go through them because we didn't use this in the end. And for the filling, a jar of maraschino cherries, gelatin, cold water, egg whites, sugar, whipped cream, extract, and lemon. Like I said, we didn't go through this. We modified this one. And then it gives me the instructions, step by step. How to mix my pretzel crust, how to drain the cherry. Spit it out, John. The cherry prep and the gelatin prep. And then how to combine it all together and pour it into your crust and put some thick syrup on the top. All really sounds good. And it gave me a note on food safety for that chiffon pie. Since this is a traditional chiffon pie using uncooked egg whites, ensure you use pasteurized eggs. The ones sold in cartons are specially marked. If you prefer to avoid raw eggs entirely, I can show you how to swap the meringue for a cooked marshmallow base instead. So it asked me, would you like to stick with this version or shall we adjust the recipe to be egg-free? I wrote back, I said, would this work if I skip the meringue completely? And Google said, yes, you can absolutely skip the meringue. If you remove the egg whites, you're essentially moving from a chiffon pie to a stabilized mousse pie. It will be slightly denser and creamier, more like a thick whipped cream rather than a airy and foamy like. To make this work without egg whites, you need to adjust the ratio slightly to ensure the pie still holds its shape. So then it proceeds to give me a no egg cherry mousse method. And you can see here it says increase the heavy cream, whip the stiff peaks, gelatin bridge. He updated on how to assemble it with no meringue. Let's see, bloom and dissolve the gelatin, cool the gelatin, whipping the cream, folding it all together, and pouring it into the chill pie crust. And then it gave me a blurb on why it works. It says the gelatin acts as a skeleton for whipped cream. Without egg whites, the pie will taste more like a maraschino flavored chantilly cream. It will be very rich and decadent. One quick tip, since you aren't using the sugar from the meringue, adding that bit of powdered sugar to the whipped cream is important for both sweetness and structure. Would you like to suggest some decorating tops for the finished pie, like a specific garnish or whipped border? See, Google went very in-depth with it, you know. I'm really impressed. And I wrote back, I said, okay, can you type me a complete recipe of this option to include the ingredients for the maraschino flavor I will be using Reese's maraschino syrup? And I put in bracket, it has a great flavor if you didn't know. For the crust, I want to use a crushed Oreo base. I would like to garnish the pie maybe with whipped cream and cherries drizzled with chocolate syrup. Can you do that? And Google said, that sounds like a fantastic combination. Using Reese's maraschino syrup is a pro move. It's known for having a much deeper, more wild cherry flavor than standard bright red jars, which will make the pie taste more sophisticated. Here's your custom recipe for the creamy Reese's maraschino and Oreo mousse pie. And then it gives me the recipe. The Oreos, butter for the crust, the creamy maraschino filling. It uses 1.5 cups of whipped cream, powdered sugar, gelatin, cold water, my Reese's maraschino syrup, almond extract, and 1/2 cup of maraschino cherries, chopped and patted very dry. To garnish, extra whipped cream, whole maraschino cherries, and chocolate syrup. Then it gives me the instructions, how to make the base. And by the way, it tells you to pulse the Oreos in a food processor until the crumbs are fine. I ignored Google here and I used a rolling pin and a 1 gallon Ziploc bag. And I should have listened to Google because that would have made a much better crust, I think, if I'd dug out my food processor and turned those cookies into crumbs. I mean, the rolling pin method worked, but it took a long time, and the chunks weren't as fine as I would like for my crust. So I should have went with Google. Okay, so like I said, it goes on how to do the Oreo base, prepare the flavor base, which is the filling, I guess you call it. Sprinkle the gelatin, melt it, combine it with syrup, almond extract, and create the mousse by whipping your whipped cream and adding your cherry gelatin to that at the right appropriate time, and then folding it all together. Then pour the filling into your crust and refrigerate for 4 hours. The grand finale, it tells you how to garnish it. And for the pro tip, they gave me a pro tip for the drizzle. If you want the chocolate drizzle to look clean and not run into the cream, make sure the pie is very cold. If you use a thicker chocolate fudge sauce, warm slightly, instead of thin syrup, it will set up on the cold pie like a soft candy shell. Would you like me to help convert any of these measurements to metric? Are you ready to start baking? I wrote back. Would this pie work well without including the chopped cherries to the filling? The reason I ask is because I want to freeze dry some of the filling for a test. Maraschino cherries do not freeze dry well. That's what I told Google. Google came back and said, that is a brilliant idea. Freeze drying dairy-based mousses is a huge trend right now because they turn into crunchy clouds that melt into your mouth. Yes, they do. You are 100% correct about the cherries. The high sugar content in maraschino cherries, basically a syrup-soaked fruit, prevents them from freezing solid enough for a clean sublimation process. They usually stay gummy or tacky, which ruins the texture of the freeze-dried slice, which that has been my past experience. I didn't tell Google that. My past experience with maraschinos is I couldn't get them to dry. They were always chewy and tacky, no matter how long I freeze-dried them. So it's interesting that Google knew that. Will the pie work without them? Yes, perfectly. In fact, for freeze drying, removing the fruit trunks is actually better, and here's why. And it gives me a few reasons why it's better to not have the cherries in it. And it gives me adjustments for the freeze drying success. Tells me about the fat content and stabilization. The gelatin is your best friend, which I already knew. That's why I wanted to go that route in the first place. How to handle the test. It tells me basically to make my pie, fill the pie, and reserve a small amount, and put that small amount on my freeze dryer tray and freeze it into squares. It said, would you like me to adjust the recipe amounts to make a little extra filling specifically for your freeze drying test? And I said, yes, please. And when you rewrite it, please do not include the chopped cherries. And Google printed me out a complete recipe for the Reese's Cherry Chocolate Cloud Pie. Now that you notice the title's changing along as we go, and we haven't got to what the final title is going to be of my invented treat. So the ingredients, it tells me Oreo cookies and butter, scaled up filling, it tells me increase the amount of whipped cream, powdered sugar, gelatin, unflavored gelatin, cold water, maraschino cherry syrup, almond extract, and lemon juice, and the garnish afterwards, which is whipped cream, maraschino cherries, and chocolate syrup. Alright, it then tells me how to do it. Crush the Oreos, freeze that, and press them into your 9-inch pie plate. Freeze it for 20 minutes, and while that's freezing, we're going to bloom the gelatin, incorporate the syrup into that bloomed gelatin, and extract and lemon juice. And for the mousse, we whip up the whipped cream until it was stiff peaks. Then with the mixer on low, we poured our gelatin mix into the whipped cream. And finally, with the spatula, we kind of mixed that all up just to make sure there weren't no streaks running through the pie. And that came out a beautiful pink color for my pie. My camera didn't really catch it, I don't think, but it really is a pretty pie. And for the pie, we poured, it says 3/4 of the mixture into the Oreo crust. Well, my pie pan was a 9.5 inch, and this was written for a 9 inch, so I ended up using quite a bit of that pie filling, actually almost all of it. I had enough for the test, but not as much as I thought I was going to have. And for the test, it tells you to pour those in a silicone mold or something, freeze dry, and freeze that. Okay, it says to set the pie in the refrigerator for 4 to 6 hours. And it says crucial for the freeze drying. Move them to the freezer for 2 hours until rock solid. This prevents the vacuum pump from exploding the bubbles in the mousse. So again, Google is aware that the freeze dryer uses vacuum and that we can have what's called an explosion. And it points that out to me, which is very impressive. And if I was a total newbie, that's important information I would need to know. Why this version is better. It tells you all the reasons why it's better. And then it asks me, would you like me to give you a quick tip on the best thickness to slice the pie if you decide to freeze dry an entire slice later? And I said, no, but your recipe looks fantastic. The only change I would like to make is that for the freeze-dried test part, I would like to sprinkle crumbled Oreos on top of each little square. I would have to increase the original Oreo mix. Do you like that idea? If so, can you rewrite the complete recipe again? And it says that's a fantastic idea, and basically it says, yeah, I'll rewrite it for you, increasing the Oreos. And there you go. There's the increased of everything. Its yield is 1 9-inch pie plus 1 tray of test squares. The Oreo components, the smooth maraschino filling ingredients, and the instructions on how to prepare it. You can't get easier than that. And for the maraschino cherries, we flavor base, creating the mousse, dividing and garnish, and doing my test squares as well, which we did in the original video. So then it says step 5, chill. Place both the pie and the test squares in the fridge for 6 hours. Freeze. Move the test squares to the freezer for at least 2 hours until rock solid before you slice them and put them into the freeze dryer. I just went with the squares. I just went straight to the freezer. I didn't bother chilling them for 6 hours. I stuck them straight in the freezer and I froze them overnight, which is what I do with all my loads. I freeze them overnight. All right. It says good luck with your experiment. The combination of crunchy Oreo topping and airy cherry mousse should be incredible once freeze dried. Would you like me to help you brainstorm a name for your freeze-dried creation for when you share it with friends? And I said, yeah, please do. Okay, then it suggested a bunch of titles. You can see them here. I won't go through them all. Ones that stood out for me was the name Midnight Maraschino and Midnight Oreo. That really stood out to me from that list. And the creamy maraschino cloud stood out to me. My top recommendation for your channel is the name of the dessert, Midnight Maraschino Cherry. The Midnight Maraschino Cloud Pie. And I wrote back, I said, I love the name you gave them for the pie. I'm not totally happy with all the titles. They gave me those titles, and I didn't really like those titles, but they weren't, that's not important right now. So maybe we can try another title, or once recorded, I can post a transcript for you to work with, which is exactly what I did. So I went ahead and recorded the video and uploaded the transcript of that video to Google Gemini here in this same conversation. I'm not going to show that. And then from that, we came up with the title for the video. So there you go. And if Google concluded with, that makes total sense, doing it, working from the transcript. That makes total sense. A title needs to feel right for your specific voice and channel style. The Midnight Maraschino Cloud is a great brand name to anchor the video. So we kind of breezed through that really quick. Like I say, anywhere in there, feel free to just press pause on the video if you want to read all the ingredients and all the things I breezed over real quick. And you can see it's really, basically just imagine yourself sitting across from a chef at the table discussing this pie creation that you want to make. So the chef is obviously going to have all that wide, vast knowledge, and you have an idea. So the chef's going to give you some things to choose from, and you're going to say, well, I like this, but I don't like that, or can I substitute this? And Google just says, basically, it never said no. It found a way to substitute, i.e. the maraschino syrup that we used, instead of originally it was telling you to use the juice from maraschinos and cooking it down and all that stuff, or just taking out the maraschino cherries and not using them at all because of the freeze-dried process, increasing the Oreos because we want to make a test batch. It just handled everything. So just pretend that that AI is just another human being and you're having a conversation, and you're going to get some good results. Now, I got another pie in mind that we're going to run through Google. Pretty much I know how I'm going to make it already. But we're going to run it through Google and see if they come up with something, because they might pick up something that I missed, you know, in my thought process. And that'd be great to find out before than to waste the product and have to find out the hard way. So there you have it. That was a quick review of how to use Google Gemini to create or invent a new pie. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it encourages you to not be afraid of that AI. Get in there and just play around with it. It's fun. I've learned a lot of stuff using AI and created a lot of different things, not with my videos, but other things with AI. So I just enjoy playing with it. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, hit that like button, please. Subscribe if you haven't already. And tell someone else about John and Bibs on YouTube. I'll see you later.